Welcome back to Klepper's Corner, Today in History, the show where we examine the events of one specific day across human civilization and ask, why does November 28th have more going on than a Costco parking lot on Turkey Trample weekend? Seriously, this date contains more political upheaval, scientific breakthroughs, maritime disasters, and cosmic revelations than most high school history textbooks contain in 400 pages. If November 28th were a person, it would be that kid in class who raises their hand for every question, even when the teacher hasn't asked one. So, buckle up, because today we are covering explorers who risked everything, scientists who redefined everything, nations that declared everything, and tragedies that burned everything down. It's history, but louder. Segment 1. Magellan names the Pacific. The calm before 99 days of, oh God, we're gonna die. On November 28, 1520, Ferdinand Magellan and his exhausted, mutiny-prone, scurvy-flavored crew sailed out of the strait that now bears his name and entered a vast, calm ocean. Magellan took one look at the serene water and said, let's call it the Pacific. This is like walking into a quiet Walmart on a Wednesday morning and declaring, this must always be peaceful. Give it 2 hours and one Black Friday sale, and it becomes a war zone. This is also the moment Europeans officially learned Earth was not only round, but ridiculously huge. The Pacific was so big, the crew basically realized they'd brought snacks for a short hike and instead found themselves in the middle of a marathon run across an alien desert. They ate rats. They ate sawdust. They cooked the leather off the ship. A Michelin zero-star dining experience. By the time they reached land, they'd traveled so far west, they accidentally time-traveled. Their calendar was off by a full day. Imagine doing all that work and still being late for work. Segment 2, the Royal Society, where science finally got its Costco membership card. On November 28, 1660, 12 extremely smart men, Boyle, Wilkins, Wren, and friends, got together and said, let's create an institution dedicated to experimental science. And because it was the 17th century, they did this in a college building that probably smelled like candle smoke, horse sweat, and bad plumbing. But this meeting gave birth to the Royal Society, the group that practically invented peer review. Before this, science meant guy with a beard saying something competently. After this, it meant prove it. Their motto, nullius in verba, literally means take nobody's word for it, which is adorable in an age where people now Google, is the moon real, and decide the answer using a meme of a raccoon wearing sunglasses. Still, this moment reshaped the world. Without the Royal Society, we might not have Newton's Principia, modern chemistry, or decades of awkward scientists trying to explain to royalty why their experiments smell weird. Segment 3, Panama, Albania, Mauritania, East Timor, South Ossetia. Everyone declares independence today. If your country wants independence, November 28th is apparently the group chat's suggested date. Panama threw off Spanish rule in 1821 with a bloodless revolution, because Spain was too busy losing every other colony to pay attention. Panama basically walked out the door and left a note on the table saying, we're joining Gran Colombia. Don't wait up. Albania declared independence in 1912, raised a medieval eagle flag, and immediately had its borders redrawn by Europeans who treated maps like finger paintings. Nearly half of all Albanians ended up outside Albania. It was independence, but with an asterisk the size of Kosovo. Mauritania gained freedom from France in 1960, becoming a nation stuck between Arab North Africa and Black West Africa. Essentially, the historical equivalent of living between two loud neighbors. East Timor declared independence in 1975, and then got invaded 9 days later. 9 days. Babies take longer to open their eyes. And South Ossetia declared independence in 1991, which the world greeted the way people greet emails from their HOA. We saw this, we are ignoring it. November 28th is Independence Day for everyone who didn't get the good dates in the calendar draft. Segment 4, the American Civil War's Battle of Cane Hill. the longest "we're walking here" fight ever. On November 28, 1862, Union and Confederate forces clashed in Arkansas for 9 straight hours across 12 miles of hills, ravines, and terrain so rugged even horses probably filed workplace complaints. Union General James Blunt surprised Confederate cavalry under Marmaduke and said, "We're running at you now," to which the Confederates responded, "Okay, well, we're running away now." Casualties were low, but the battle mattered because it ruined Confederate plans for a big counterattack. It was basically that moment in every football game where someone shoves the quarterback enough to ruin the whole season strategy. Cane Hill didn't end the war, but it did set the table for Prairie Grove, like the world's deadliest appetizer sampler. Segment 5, the Tehran Conference, when Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin had a sleepover. November 28, 1943, the Big Three finally meet. Roosevelt traveled 7,000 miles. Churchill brought cigars, and Stalin arrived with the vibe of a man who could win a staring contest with a brick wall. They agreed to Operation Overlord, shifting Poland's borders and promising Iranian independence. It was diplomacy meets reality show. 3 world leaders forced to cooperate while judging each other's geopolitical hygiene. Roosevelt wanted friendship. Churchill wanted strategy. Stalin wanted everything. It was productive, but also the birthplace of the Cold War, proving that even when the Allies were winning, they were also losing something, emotionally, spiritually, and definitely geographically. Segment 6, women vote in New Zealand. Democracy finally asks half the population what they think. On November 28, 1893, New Zealand held the world's first general election, where women voted, and not just a few, tens of thousands, smoothly, calmly, without society collapsing into a Victorian fainting spell. Opponents promised chaos, neglected babies, ruined marriages, a horse economy in crisis. Instead, women voted, the country continued existing, and the only noticeable change was that the Liberal Party won big, shocking exactly 0 people familiar with patterns of human gratitude. New Zealand basically looked at the rest of the world and said, "This wasn't that hard. What are you all doing?" Segment 7, the discovery of pulsars, when Jocelyn Bell Burnell accidentally found space's most annoying metronomes. On November 28, 1967, graduate student Jocelyn Bell Burnell noticed a tiny repeating blip in radio data every 1.33 seconds. Her supervisor jokingly labeled it "little green men." Scientists love jokes that later make them look foolish. Bell Burnell then found more blips. Turns out the universe wasn't calling. Stars were collapsing into super-dense, rapidly spinning neutron stars, emitting perfect cosmic beeps. Pulsars proved relativity, extreme matter physics, and also that graduate students do 95% of the real work. Hewish got the Nobel. Bell Burnell got history's most loudly side-eyed omission. Segment 8, Mariner 4, the mission that said, "Mars ain't cute." On November 28, 1964, NASA launched Mariner 4, the first probe to get close-up pictures of Mars. Before that, humans imagined canals, cities, maybe a tired Martian playing a saxophone on a balcony. Mariner 4 arrived in 1965 and sent back 22 grainy images that basically said, "Nope, just rocks. So many rocks." It killed the sci-fi fantasy and launched the scientific era. Mars went from cosmic romance novel to dry geology textbook overnight. Still, it shaped every mission since, including the ones trying to find whether Mars ever had something more exciting than dust. Segment 9, Enrico Fermi, when the architect of the nuclear age exited the stage. On November 28, 1954, Enrico Fermi died, leaving behind the legacy of a man who basically said, "What if we take physics and make it terrifyingly powerful?" He built the first nuclear reactor. He cracked the secrets of the atom. He made the Manhattan Project possible. And he did all of it with the demeanor of a polite man explaining why your math homework is wrong. Fermi's death marked the end of physics jazz age, a moment when brilliant weirdos unlocked reality and hoped desperately that governments wouldn't misuse their work. Spoiler alert, they did. Segment 10, the Coconut Grove Fire, the tragedy that rewrote safety forever. On November 28, 1942, the Coconut Grove nightclub in Boston caught fire and became one of the worst disasters in American history. Nearly 500 people died because of flammable decorations, locked exits, and a revolving door that acted like a human pasta strainer. The tragedy changed everything. Outward opening doors, emergency exit rules, fire codes, medical treatment for burns. This disaster rewrote the whole manual. It was horror, but it also forced reforms that have saved thousands since. Sometimes history punches you in the face and then hands you a textbook labeled, "Please do better." Segment 11, the Mount Erebus disaster, when navigation data and a literal mountain had a misunderstanding. On November 28, 1979, an Air New Zealand sightseeing flight over Antarctica crashed straight into Mount Erebus because flight coordinates were changed the night before without telling the pilots. Combine that with a whiteout so perfect it erased the difference between sky and mountain, and disaster was inevitable. The crash killed all 257 on board. The airline blamed the pilots. A later inquiry said, no, actually, the airline lied. This became famous for Justice Mahone's scathing phrase, an orchestrated litany of lies, which is also a solid band name. The crash reshaped aviation safety worldwide. Segment 12, the Grand Ole Opry. Hillbilly radio becomes an American institution. On November 28, 1925, a fiddler named Uncle Jimmy Thompson played on WSM radio in Nashville, creating what would become the Grand Ole Opry. It started as a barn dance. Today, it's a shrine to American music. It produced legends like Roy Acuff, Dolly Parton, and basically everyone who's ever worn a glorious rhinestone jacket. It's the show that said, what if we turn country music into a national treasure? Answer, it worked. Segment 13, Blake Irving Gordy, the artist who bent reality. William Blake, born November 28, 1757, saw angels in trees and wrote poetry that sounded like it was produced by a man who time traveled through multiple dimensions. Washington Irving died on this date in 1859, America's first internationally famous writer, and inventor of Sleepy Hollow's Headless Horseman, proving American folklore started spooky and stayed spooky. Berry Gordy, born November 28, 1929, founded Motown and basically integrated American pop culture through music alone. Without Gordy, half of modern music doesn't exist, and the other half is worse. In conclusion, November 28th is not just another box on the calendar. It is a historical fire hose, blasting explorers into the unknown, nations into existence, scientists into revelation, and humanity into both triumph and tragedy. It's the day where independence blooms, science evolves, tragedies teach, and the universe goes beep beep, just to remind us it's still weird out there. So whether you're celebrating a national holiday, staring at Mars with disappointment, or telling the Royal Society you also reject taking anybody's word for it, remember, this one date contains the entire emotional spectrum of human history. And tomorrow, we get to do it all again.